one of the most controversial names in pro wrestling, and that is in some ways a massive over-exaggeration. Strictly relating to the squared circle, Goldberg is a pretty controversial name, but other than the wrestling, he's fairly inoffensive. But you get a range of emotions if you mention the name of Bill Goldberg to somebody. A feeling of joy and nostalgia for some. Goldberg connected as a mostly indestructible superhero to them in the youth, a man considered an inspiration for many, including former WWE champion Big E, or a man that doesn't know when to quit, super unsafe, dangerous, and often doesn't grasp the idea of wrestling despite being around some of the most iconic names in the history of the industry. Goldberg's career is a huge paradox and something that fascinates me because of his continued success despite his clear deterioration throughout the years. A man whose career worked so well when at times it shouldn't have, and in some ways he's failed upwards, but to tell the story and to understand this in great detail, we have to go back to a time where pro wrestling wasn't even on Goldberg's mind. His first passion was football, and I know someone might say wrestling isn't his passion, but judging by the last few years, it definitely developed into one. He wasn't the best football player, but was still in the top 1%, and the smallest margins at the top are enough to either bring you to a roster or find yourself as an unsigned free agent. Goldberg played in the NFL on and off for about 5 years, which is an impressive feat, but it was time to change things up. In addition, he suffered a rough lower abdomen tear that dashed his hopes, and a story that is a recurring tale in Goldberg's career is the tale of luck and timing. Lex Luger and Sting were familiar with him, having worked out at their gym in Atlanta, and told him to try out wrestling. He didn't think much of professional wrestling, but seeing the previous success of plenty of ball players in the past, it was a good opportunity. WCW didn't really care about allowing him to develop as a wrestler, which turned out to be a huge mistake, and usually when that happens, said wrestler becomes nothing of note. And on paper, Goldberg didn't have anything that stood out about him. He was a bald wrestler who wore black trunks, and unlike Stone Cold Steve Austin, he didn't have an explosive character or a personality that would turn heads. But there was a huge potential in him. WCW rushed him to the point where he got an ego. Now to go back for a moment, WCW's power plant wasn't the best training facility, but Goldberg didn't go through all the training as well. They saw how well he connected with the fans and decided, you know what? Let's put him on TV. Goldberg was developing a huge undefeated streak and missed his training, and normally, a wrestler has to go through hell and pay their dues before even getting a chance at the mid-card, let alone become a potential main eventer. It's so weird how everything that wasn't supposed to work his way ended up working. But Goldberg had a lot of intensity and charisma. For as rough as his wrestling was, that's all he knew. He had a wide array of moves in his moveset, but obviously didn't have the talent to string together the match itself. And when you look at his moveset in his first WCW matches, you just gotta wonder. In the world that Goldberg had that big ego to prove himself as a good talent, his career would have gone down differently. Instead, he had 3 moves and wrestled like he wanted to kill somebody. And while it's dangerous, that's the allure of Goldberg. He caught on easily with the fans and made himself more known to the wider audience within a couple of months. He got over by destroying wrestlers, no paying your dues, none of that rough chapter in a career. Nobody could do anything about it because the fans really liked him. And a funny observation of Goldberg is that he became a megastar before becoming a wrestler. The streak became a phenomenon, and Goldberg found himself winning the United States Championship, and not too long after, the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. The night he won the title, he was like a deer in the headlights during his match with Scott Hall. It was a sluggish and very awkward match that reminds you that without getting over in that time, he would still be in the power plant. The thing is, you couldn't argue against Bill Goldberg. It doesn't make sense. The biggest stars of pro wrestling in 1998 were Stone Cold Steve Austin, Hollywood Hogan, The Undertaker, Kevin Nash, Sting, towards the end of the year, The Rock, and Goldberg. That's the elite of the elite in the second prime of pro wrestling. Goldberg was something special despite being nothing special. He was living out Bob Holly's dream of beating everyone and winning the title, and while he was green and we could make plenty of arguments against him, how many people were going to be as believable and intense as Bill Goldberg? Not many 250-pound plus guys could do this. A lot of wrestlers such as Scott Hall and of course Bret Hart didn't like working with him, and some of the top guys despised working with him, and normally that would get you ostracized, but Goldberg is an anomaly. 1998 was a banner year for pro wrestling, and the two front and center were Goldberg and Stone Cold Steve Austin. You weren't going to talk to this guy. What were you going to say? Oh, you're green, you suck? He's making money for the whole company, he's bringing in ratings, and you're going to talk against him? As a wrestler, I'm not talking about as a fan. But this push wasn't sustainable. Not so much the Goldberg push, but the streak itself. And when it ended, it almost felt like he lost his identity because he never got going as well as he did in 1998. There was injuries, one of the worst heel turns you'll see, Vince Russo booking a story where Goldberg refuses to follow the script leading to a face turn, and when WCW closed, Goldberg ended his run there with only 1 world title to his name. His reputation was that of an unsafe worker, but somebody who undeniably got a reaction from the crowd. Even in WCW's dark days, Goldberg was still the most popular name in the promotion, one of the greenest wrestlers, as one of the top top guys. I think it's very important to mention that Goldberg's legacy would have been enhanced if he was a bit better, because then the unsafe allegations would diminish and he could wrestle matches longer than a song. And these sanks actually worked against him coming to the WWF, because Triple H would often make a big deal out of Goldberg's limitations and they hated each other. A lot of the criticism that Goldberg has these days were around when he was in WCW, but they began showing more when he made his way to WWE. Fresh off an All Japan Pro Wrestling run that showed Goldberg's wide moveset that he rarely uses, he didn't have the greatest of starts. Triple H at one point said Goldberg is his biggest believer in his own hype, and if you know something about his career, it's that many people have said the same thing. They even go as far as to call him a mark for himself. His WWE run was one where they went beyond what they usually do all for a year. He was getting a guaranteed $1 million contract, didn't work house shows, but they wanted him to have long matches and ruined his title reign. While Goldberg had great limitations, WWE should have known better than to let him go out like that. Then he makes no intention of staying around even though WWE wanted him, seeing as the roster was getting lighter. He left, they hated him since, and for a guy like Goldberg, leaving WWE like that wasn't the best decision, but just like everything in this video, it magically seemed to benefit him. And that's the allure I had with this video. To me, I thought to myself, this guy had a lot of things that would either blacklist them or just flat out have people forget about them, but it works for Goldberg. It's so funny how somebody who didn't care about wrestling succeeded as much as he did, because he didn't really put in the effort to go to become a much better performer. He didn't care. But Goldberg left at the right time. He was just gonna get exposed more in WWE. Imagine this guy trying to wrestle JBL in 2004 SmackDown. Now, when you're a kid, you tend to disregard certain things. As a kid, I understood the novelty of Bill Goldberg. He just captivates the kids. I was captivated by him and always hoped that him and Brock Lesnar would return to the world of wrestling. It's because they were perfect video game characters. And the reason why I'm saying this is because this guy had more limits than the TVG rating, but he still had a career that many would dream of and had all the kids going crazy for him. The legend of Goldberg grew in his absence. He made it known that he would never return unless they really wanted him, and it took a while, but it ended up happening. Bill Goldberg was back in WWE. He had a huge marketing campaign in line with WWE 2K17, and for a moment, WWE captured the magic of WCW Goldberg. Survivor Series 2016 was an incredible night for Goldberg, but one that wasn't sustainable in the future. His return was diminishing and he was exposed. A lot of the fans still enjoyed seeing him, and he was still a ratings draw, but the flaws that Goldberg had were on full display. They weren't so much a full display in 2017, but in 19 it's a different story. For one, he never evolved. He's worse in ring, can't wrestle a match more than 5 minutes still, and he's older. But it seemed like he was closing his career. Then he returned and showed he couldn't lift wrestlers properly, and he was becoming a hazard, even more than he was in the past. But he was still rewarded, and we're not idiots to be oblivious as to why. He makes money and all that. It just works for him so well. Like, WWE didn't feel like building up new stars. They just decided, you know what, we're gonna go with Goldberg. That build with Bray Wyatt, The Fiend, for as much as you could hate on it, he looked like a supreme badass out there, showing zero fear of The Fiend and beating him in 6 minutes. I like the idea of someone beating The Fiend the way Goldberg did, due to the mental mind games. You know, he doesn't believe in that stuff. But it's crazy, because this guy, he wasn't even a WWE original. And now, he was basically one of the top guys of the modern era, even though he's a part-timer. Does he know when to quit? No. But WWE also gave him the opportunities he should have had in 2003. His whole career is a weird story. If you copied Goldberg of the late 10s and early 20s to 2003 WWE, not the botches, the company would be a very different place. Perhaps he would have stayed after WrestleMania 20. He went so far off so little and almost did some sort of cheat code with his run. He's the perfect paradox. Someone who works in wrestling and someone who doesn't. If you look at his run from the simplest point of view, he made money, accomplished everything that a top wrestler could, and won multiple world titles in 2 different companies. On paper, this is an all-timer. There is not many wrestlers in the history of professional wrestling that reached the peak that Bill Goldberg did. From 1998 until now, you can only count on one hand the number of people that managed to reach that level. Closer inspection, you see a guy who doesn't know what the hell he's doing out there. And the funny part is that this is something he'll tell you himself. He succeeded in a system that wasn't meant for him. He got squash matches, won the world title 1 year to his debut, and matched Stone Cold in terms of popularity at one point. You'd expect the person to stand on the same level as Austin to be a seasoned vet, finally enjoying their success, whereas for Goldberg, the circumstances of his push led this to becoming his norm. He said once in an interview that he didn't know how to lose, yet he was pushed to the very top and given the keys to the kingdom. Everything about him defies the logic of wrestling, but there's also a reason why there's hurdles and struggles in the road to the main event scene, because you learn why it's necessary to have these rules in place. You know, you appreciate it more. In another world, Goldberg has the ego and decides to work on his cardio, ring intelligence, and then the arguments would have disappeared. He had an incredible mystique about him upon his debut, something that greatly helped and suited him. He had also a wide array of moves in his moveset, but the guys around him allowed for Goldberg to do whatever he saw fit, and in addition, his success managed to shut up detractors. So there's that. Alright, what do you guys think of Goldberg's career? Please comment down below, and that's it for this video. Make sure you hit the spear on the like button or perhaps the jackhammer on the subscribe button. Peace. I'm out.